Welcome to Walk, Don't Run to the Doctor, where we are helping people avoid the burdens of preventable disease. By using evidence-based lifestyle tools to unlock each person's intrinsic healing ability, we're going to be supporting healthy families, healthy communities, and healthy individuals. Making your own food and moving every day vigorously can help you gain freedom from health debt. We can prove it. Welcome back to Walk, Don't Run to the Doctor, and I'm Miles Hassell, MD, in internal medicine in Portland, Oregon, and I'm the Chief Medical Officer for greatmed.org, where we try to sort out what actually makes a difference in life and what doesn't, in terms of lifestyle approaches to your health. And we're here with Jen Smith. Thanks for joining us again, Jen.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
Jen has Starting Strength. It's a weightlifting gym in Beaverton, Oregon. And last episode, we talked a lot about the whole aspect of fitness, muscle mass, and in particular, bone mass, while touching on other subjects such as, frankly, things like posture and how much better the body works when it has adequate muscle mass. Today, we're going to be talking about the other benefits of fitness and muscle mass. Once again, Jen, I was sort of thinking if you saw some examples in your clients regarding diabetes or heart disease or mental health. Or tell me about some of the stuff you've seen.
You bet.
Successes you've seen with patients who have taken your program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you bet. We have a lot of clients who come in wanting to prevent those diseases. That's a lot of it. And so we have clients who have come in and said, I don't want to take a statin. I want to control it through muscle, right? Or I don't want to, I'm trying to avoid, I've got diabetes that runs in the family. Maybe they even have, a lot of us struggle with our weight management. Those can be issues. People like that, no matter their genetics or their size, are going to benefit from building muscle. And so we have multiple situations like that. We have a young lady who came in with an autoimmune disease, and she wasn't sure if she'd be able to lift. And our coaches were able to work around that, and it did nothing but help her. And now she's lifting heavy with confidence. And so I guess I would say what I love about what you're doing and with Great Med is we are in the prevention business with you. We do have clients who come in that have struggled with some of those issues, and we take those on a case-by-case if they are already experiencing type 2 diabetes. They're already experiencing some heart. But what we work with more are people who are prone to those issues, and they come and build muscle mass to prevent them. And that's where we come in to help them, because as you know, muscle mass is so critical to trying to prevent type 2 diabetes. I don't know if you want to talk more about that. That's tied in with weight management. Weight management is a very different thing than I want to lose weight right away and look good for a wedding. That's not what we do. We're talking about a lifelong, a muscle mass so that we can absorb glucose, and keep our blood sugars down, things like that.
So Jen, once again, looking at what you do with helping people build muscle mass, what are a few of the key metabolic things, health things that you see benefiting?
Sure, absolutely. There's a few, there's so many. I think it improves every aspect of your health, but a couple of the big ones is obviously maintaining your strength. That means you stay independent. You are reducing your risks of fall. You're improving your ability to recover from a fall. And beyond the fall thing, just being independent, driving, walking, housework, recreation. You're going to be independent when you have muscle mass.
Being able to do things.
Being able to do things. Sometimes I think when you're young, you think when you get older, you're not going to want to do things. Well, you are. You're going to want to do the fun things then that you do now, and
can I give you a couple of stories on that?
Yes, please.
So we had two things come to my mind. One is our my receptionist in my office started using grip strength improvers because we have those all around the office, and so that people when she was on a phone call, she would just be doing grip strength, and suddenly she found out there wasn't a jar she couldn't open. And she to her that was kind of a triumph, and I can see her point.
Oh, absolutely.
A second one along these lines is we had this guy who was in his middle 70s, and every year he'd take his family to Hawaii. Mm-hmm. He was retired. He'd worked hard and was able to take his family to Hawaii every year. And he came back from the last trip after working out and improving his muscle mass. Mm-hmm. And he said, in the past, on all the trips, I would sit around the pool while everybody else went and did hikes and did fun things. He said, this was the first time I was able to join everybody in doing, and he said on one particular hike at Diamond Head, he said,
Oh, yeah.
I was passing other people. And the sense of triumph I had, he was commenting on, was really something.
So great. I
Going,
love it.
So being from
Yeah.
this pool slug, you could
Yes,
say, I hope
yes.
I'm not insulting anybody,
Nah.
to somebody who could go out and do stuff and still be in the arena. Still
And
be
let's
able-
get real. Beat someone else. Don't let's not pretend we're not all just a little satisfied by that, a little motivated. It's like, yes, I got you.
So go through a couple of the other
That's
things.
so
you see.
great. I
Yeah.
love that. And you know what else is now he's having more fun on those trips.
Oh, absolutely.
right. And his kids are.
And we'll talk about some of the other things that have benefited people,
that's
him
so
and people
great.
like him in a
Right,
second. But go
right,
over your finish your
so
list.
that maintaining the strength, the bone health, of course. Okay, and then the metabolic health, which I'm sure you can get a little deeper into. But that is, in short, that is your body's ability to process and utilize nutrients effectively. Your metabolic health. So. The short answer to that is muscle helps you, all of that healthy eating that you're trying to do. It helps you use those nutrients more effectively. So if we're going to go to all the trouble and heartache to say no to the cinnamon roll, like you were assaulted with this morning.
I ate half of it.
Oh, okay. That makes me feel better. Is the other half still around? Okay. But on a side note, I should tell you, it's my coach Amanda's birthday today. I don't know if I should tell your listeners this. I might have brought little mini crumble cookies to celebrate her birthday. Okay, every once in a while, right, Dr. Hassell? That's okay. So anyway.
That's why we have resilient bodies.
That's right. Amanda has the muscle to absorb, but she's in her 30s. I don't feel too bad. I don't worry about her. Anyway, but if we're going to go to the trouble to eat right and make those decisions, and let's have the muscle mass and the metabolic health to make that healthy eating work for us, right? We all know people. I know people who are very sedentary and they don't eat that poorly, but they're not healthy. And they don't overeat, but they might be overweight. That's all tied into your metabolic health.
Yeah.
So that's a great reason to develop muscle mass. And then as we talked about, the easiest way I like to think of it with the type 2 diabetes, it gives your sugar somewhere to go. Your muscle gives your glucose a place to go. And that saves your insulin from having to overwork, which keeps it from getting resistant. You can explain it much better than I am, but those are some of the big markers of why muscle's great. And then we talked about this, but I just cannot emphasize how many women, especially, and men are now standing up straight and tall in their 70s and 80s. I think there is a huge psychological benefit to that.
And I think it goes beyond their whole body works better.
Absolutely.
Your heart and lungs really are not bent, are not meant to be bent.
No, right.
And the diabetes thing, I see these people taking, for example, handfuls of supplements for this diabetes when they aren't increasing their muscle mass. And I think, what are they thinking? Who's advising them? This is just dumb and kind of fraudulent, I would submit.
Okay.
And so one of the things that we like to see is the type 2 diabetic taught that in most cases they can actually reverse their diabetes. And for example, in the Diadem-1 study, it was a randomized controlled trial that involved eating more vegetables, exercising for 150 minutes a week, and those that improved their lean muscle mass had the best benefit in terms of diabetes. Numerous other risk markers, of course, like blood pressure and stuff improved, less medications. But what's interesting is in this study, 61% of the people actually no longer had diabetes. And so that's really a critical aspect to this issue, I think, is teaching people how muscle mass is part of the treatment for their disease. The numerous other studies have shown this in diabetes in particular, but we can actually demonstrate that improved muscle mass lowers your risk of colds and flu. Simple stuff like that. It's just infectious diseases. Pretty significant for cancer, depending on which study you believe, arguably up to about 50% risk reduction for cancer. But the various numbers are thrown around, but it certainly makes a big difference to cancer. And also in our cancer patients who develop muscle mass, who increase fitness, they also have less side effects from their cancer therapies. So we think that's really important.
That is
heart disease and stroke. You dramatically reduce your risk of heart disease. And if you have heart disease, dramatically reduce symptoms and so on.
Right.
There's no better treatment for your blood vessels than a good diet and exercise. It beats any of the drugs we have. That's not to say we don't use drugs. I'm an internal medicine doctor. I prescribe these drugs every day.
Of course.
But they fall into third or fourth line behind being fit.
And can I add to that?
Yeah.
also, let's not forget, not only is that what should be at the front line, I think most people would like, pharmaceuticals are excellent and they are a blessing when you need them, but most people would rather not have to go that route if they could. Let's not forget that in preventing all of these diseases, you are going to have a happier life. You're going to have a more fun life. You're going to have a healthier life. So it's not like we're saying give up everything fun so that you can prevent disease. Let's make your life longer, but it's going to make it better. You're going to feel better and look better and stand up tall. So it's just a double bonus if you can build muscle.
Now, Jen, there's a cost to everything.
Sure.
And there's a cost in money, there's a cost in time, there's a cost in effort, there's kind of mental effort, all these different aspects of cost. Can you just touch briefly on that?
You bet. So the cost that it would take, depending on what route you want to go, I would always encourage maybe people who listen to this podcast that haven't trained to find, at least to start with, some help, some kind of a coach or a program. So there will always be some kind of a nominal cost to that, depending on what route they choose to go. But I think we can all agree, what is the cost? I don't even want to use the word of being sick because that's kind of extreme. Let's keep it narrow to our subject of muscle. What is the cost of letting your muscles deteriorate after age 40? What is the cost of that? Because that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about muscle development. What is the cost of sitting on the couch? Or let's say you're even walking and doing some things and trying to eat right, but you're still not getting strong. You're still not developing that muscle. What would be the cost of that over the years with your increased risks, which risks at some point, at some age, are going to turn into realities. I think when you're young, the word risk, yeah, sure, I could die tomorrow. It's going to become a reality at some point. So there will be a risk that may very well turn into a reality of heart disease, of type 2 diabetes, of high blood pressure, all of these things.
Isn't there a quote on your wall at your gym that addresses this?
Yes.
What is that quote again?
We do have a quote on our wall. When you walk into our gym, on the left, it says in bold black letters, strong people are harder to kill.
And boy, that says a lot right there.
That says it all. And we're not just talking about fighting a bear.
Fighting a doctor. I mean,
yep.
Doctors like me can help you and we can hurt you. The less you have to do with us because you're healthy, the less chance we have to hurt you. So, for example, let me pretend I'm seeing a patient who has five medicines, five prescription medicines. Not uncommon, 6, 7. Am I able to predict with any accuracy whether that combination of medicines is actually good for that patient? I cannot. I have all this population data that tells me it's a reasonable thing to do. But remember that quote, strong people are harder to kill. And when we can think about it, so we've touched on a number of benefits of more muscle mass, and some of the ones that are often not thought about too much is, for example, the GI system, your gut, your intestinal tract. People who have more muscle mass, who are fitter, have a healthier microbiome inside their gut. It's a key part of how we approach people with diseases like irritable bowel syndrome or inflammatory bowel disease, which can be devastating problems. By having somebody fit, they need far less medications. Sometimes we can see a complete reversal of their symptoms. Somebody who's fitter, has more muscle mass, does better in surgery. If we can get to one of our patients who have an elective surgery coming up and get them fitter, in a surprising number of cases, such as joint replacements, they actually don't end up needing the surgery at all. And secondly, if they do need the surgery, then they do far better. They recover faster. In fact, can I tell you a patient, I don't know if he saw your gym, but he came in at 80, needed a new hip. I said, you'll do a lot better if we get 50 pounds off you and reverse your diabetes. And so he got to work, got fitter. His hip didn't hurt as much.
Go figure.
He didn't get his hip replacement
Really?
to reverse his diabetes.
Wow.
I could go on and on about all the different metabolic benefits he had with losing 50 pounds at 80 years old. And we were just at his 90th birthday party.
That is so great.
And we had a fun party.
Oh, that is so great.
So that's the kind of example of, but it wouldn't have happened if he hadn't, in between his ears, figured out, I have an alternative. I don't just have to be a passive agent here.
Right.
And that's kind of your message, I think, is don't be passive.
No. I think it is almost ridiculous how much control we have over our health. Now, we don't totally control our health any more than we can control everything in our life, but we have, and that is why I love what you're doing, Dr. Hassell, and with your book and with Great Med. You are in the business of prevention. I know you treat, but you want to be doing all prevention, it sounds like, and that's what we are. We are in that business, and we have so much control over our health and our aging, and yet so many of us are not leveraging that control like we could and we should. And so that's the mission that we're on. That's the mission that you're on. We are in the category of increasing muscle mass. That is what we do at Starting Strength. It is about developing muscle that gives you so much control in your life, so much.
And that's actually a good segue into the idea of mental health.
Great.
I think that one of the things, and once again, I'm hoping any listener who's suffering from depression, chronic fatigue, this sort of area, which are partly, I think, fall into the mental health category, if I may be so bold, listens to what Jan just said about being in charge of your own health to the extent that you can. To whatever extent God has given you abilities,
Right.
Depending on where you are and who you are and whether you have arms and legs and so on, you have a lot more control than perhaps you're taking. And I would argue that I'm not sure that any antidepressant therapy, for example, has equaled exercise in terms of outcomes. That's not to say you don't use antidepressants. It's to say that if you're on antidepressants, they'll work a whole lot better if you exercise. If you exercise and build muscle mass, you're less likely to need antidepressants. And this goes for every aspect of mental health, and it especially goes for the issue of fatigue, which is kind of a mysterious area. So somebody has fatigue. We do a zillion tests for $1 zillion, and we can't find a cause for their fatigue. Many of us suspect a lot of those cases are probably depression. Whether or not they're depression or not, whether we're right or not, is immaterial. If we can get them to exercise and build their muscle mass and eat better, their fatigue usually we see improving within a week or two. This is not a prolonged procedure in most cases. And so get that idea in your mind that you are largely in charge of your health. And don't let yourself be a victim of outside forces when you don't need to be a victim of outside forces.
And can I add to that?
Yeah,
sorry. Going back to what we talked about, the cost of strength training, let's talk about that mental health. If you can exercise, diet, eat correctly, that is even if you're hiring a personal trainer or a coach, which is great if you can do that, that is just a tiny percentage of what you will spend on doctors and therapists. And I don't even mean just monetarily, but like to your point, Miles, the mental cost, right? The emotional cost, the fatigue, the days of work missed, even just the joy of life missed. To me, the cost of some kind of a strength training program or maybe getting some help or coaching, it's just minute compared to those costs. So I just wanted to tie that back to what you were saying.
And many of our patients, one of the big things that encourages them is when they can stop their medications.
Absolutely.
Oh, I've lost a few pounds. I'm a little fitter. I've got a few more pounds of muscle instead. And I don't need my blood pressure drug anymore. I don't have my blood pressure drug, and mysteriously, my energy is better. It's worth knowing that almost all blood pressure drugs lower energy. And have other side effects too. So now when I travel, I don't need to figure out how I'm going to bring my pills with me. And it goes on and on like that.
Yes.
Can we touch, Jen, on the idea of minimal exercise?
Okay.
Right. So you, in the last episode, you talked about a 96-year-old who you started with a dowel,
right?
A wooden dowel. And we're fascinated by some of the data I mentioned earlier. I think perhaps about the grip strength trainers that we have in our office, where people, when they don't have anything better to do, they can work on their hand strength, which is a key indicator of aging.
Grip.
Can you just touch on little exercises to the extent that you're comfortable doing,
Sure.
And just that you can sprinkle into your everyday?
Yeah. Oh, okay, great. Well, because I run a strength training barbell gym, those are what I would do if you can't come to a gym and you want to do things throughout the day. The motion of a squat, a deep squat, is such an excellent stretch exercise. People often don't realize that. If you can put in some, unweighted just body squats throughout your day, you're getting that deep, stretch of motion, that posterior chain, all of that. So to do some squats is a great thing. Obviously, push-ups are always good. Chin-ups. Now, most of us speaking for myself, I have to have a band for that. Most people can't just jump up and do a bunch of push or chin-ups. But if you can find a way, to get a band at home and work on some of those things. And what I would say is try to find a way to introduce your body to or mimic the compound barbell movements as best you can. That's a squat, a deadlift, a bench press, and a standing overhead press. The reason that we coach those movements is because those are compound movements. Those work every muscle in your body, okay? So you don't have to do separate core and things like that. So if there's a way that you can work on those kinds of things, if you don't have a platform, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners do not have that, a home gym, or a gym. Try and do like some deep squats and get that deep stretch going, and try and do some push-ups or some chin-ups to build that upper body strength. Those are really good things that you can put. And then this is off of what we do, but walking, as you know, if you can fold in, they say a 10-minute walk a few times a day is excellent for your metabolism. Because I know for me, between running the business and my own strength training, I don't have time to do a lot of other classes but I can walk. I can fit in walks. I can fold in walks. My husband works crazy hours. He walks half an hour in the morning, half an hour at night. They now have walking pads. Have you seen those? Mm-mm. These are so great. I got one for Christmas. They're a couple $100. It's not the investment of a big fancy treadmill. Basically, it's just a little movable. It's not really meant for, it doesn't do all the fancy things, but you can just walk and get your steps in while you're watching. Or there's a little thing you can put your phone on, listen to something. If you're not ready to invest in a treadmill, if it's too cold outside, if your health's not great, a walking pad is excellent. You can fold it up and slide it under the couch. So those are some of the things that I would recommend.
Yeah, and a couple of other things that we do a lot ourselves and encourage other people to do. There's a gastrocnemius push-up where you're basically just sitting at your desk, and I'm doing it right now. And all you're doing is lifting your heels off the floor as high as you can and letting them go down, up and down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And that's actually been shown to have metabolic effects, including lowering blood sugar.
That's great.
So going back to the idea of being in charge of yourself, in charge of your health, I'm hoping the listener gathers that they can do something no matter what. You got a desk job, maybe have a couple dumbbells with you, maybe just do the simple weight routine without weights that Jen just described. You probably have some stairs in your building. Run up and down some stairs. Go for a walk. Maybe you can't do a push-up, but you can probably do a counter push-up. And if you don't know how to do a counter push-up, find somebody who does, because somebody in your world knows how to do that.
YouTube is a wonderful thing.
But whatever you do it, and do it more than once a day. Please. That way, you don't need people like me.
Well, and can I
You probably still need somebody like Jen.
No, I'd say like one of my coaches. Can I add to that too? Also, if you do decide to do it with some intention. None of us really get super excited and motivated by saying, I'm just going to do some random stuff. Get a little, even if it's the most modest 5-minute plan a day. This is just me, take it for what it's worth. This would just be my recommendation. Sit down and say, okay, it's February, it's the middle of February. For the next 2 weeks, write out what you're going to do. And it might literally be 5 minutes a day, but then check it off, have some intention, be able to see your achievement, be able to build on that. And this might all be simple things at home. But I know for me personally, if I just say, I'm going to do some stuff, that's not very exciting. That's not an accomplishment. And I'm going to kind of get lost in the weeds. So, that's what people love about when they come to our gym. There's a solid, expected, laid out program. There's a plan. And I think as human beings, we need that. So even if you can't do everything, just like Miles said, do the small thing, but do it with some real intention and feel good about it. Be able to check off and know I did all of those today.
So Jen, one of the things that caught our attention is you wrote an article a couple of years ago called "Should I Stay or Should I Go?" About the process of it involved a number of things, but included the mental process of deciding to build muscle. Can you just touch on that mental process?
Yeah, you bet. I think what I wrote in the article was that everything we do in life, we do twice. We do it in our mind, and then we do it in our action. And we might not think that, but we do. And that's, if you look at the way you spend your day, you'll see evidence of that. Okay, so we have to decide everything beforehand, especially hard things. So one thing I talked about in the article was when you're in the middle of a heavy squat, you have already decided if you're going to finish that squat or not, as long as it's within the reasonable weight that your coach programmed you. Okay, you have to decide ahead of time, because our human instinct wants comfort. Our human instinct wants to give up. Our human instinct, that's just our nature, right? It's a survival thing. We want to be comfortable. We want to stop when it's uncomfortable. So we need to decide ahead of time if we are going to, let's zoom out even further. Are we going to work out at all? Are we going to go to the gym or to our home gym that day? And then once we start, are we going to do everything that's on our program? And then once we're in there, are we going to finish that particular squat? It's a global and a, micro issue, a decision. And so what I have found in my own experience and the people at my gym is that you build your muscles so that they can bear more weight. You also develop your mental muscles, your mind, so that you are not bogged down with constant decisions. Okay, when you first start, you might be stressed. Am I going to do it? Should I stay or should I go? Should I finish? Should I stop? Am I going to do it? That takes a lot of energy. It takes mental and physical energy. It drains you. The longer that you choose to do something hard, after a while, yes, your muscles are still being challenged, but your mind's not, because you've already decided, I'm a person who shows up every week, and I'm a person who finishes what's assigned. Doesn't mean we're perfect, doesn't mean we don't get sick and things happen. But for the most part, we have to decide ahead of time everything we're doing. And that is true nowhere more than lifting weights, in my opinion, and whatever that means for you, right? That something that might seem easy to you might be really hard for someone else. That's, and vice versa. So it's not about doing what other people are doing. It's not about comparing or worrying about what numbers you're at. It's that, am I going to come, and when this gets hard and my body screams at me to stop, am I going to, nope, I'm not going to stop. And the more that you do that, you relieve yourself of decision fatigue, because the decision has been made. So that's one of the things that I have loved about strength training is it just trains you to do hard things. And then that obviously spills out, as you well know, into every other aspect of your life too. Mm-hmm.
We had talked earlier offline about the whole loneliness of life issue. That one could argue, probably reasonably, that we have increasing loneliness, at least in the West, and especially as people get older, friends and family leave, die, and so on. Can you talk about the intersection between fitness and strength training and loneliness? Because I think it's not intuitive.
Right. Yes. Very good. That's actually a really good point. It's not intuitive for an elderly person to think, I'm going to go join a barbell training club and make friends, right? But there's two prongs to it. The first thing that you mentioned, which I love, was about how much exercise and particularly muscle development helps with mental health, depression, anxiety. That's already going to help someone struggling with loneliness. That's not going to cure loneliness, though, because loneliness is kind of a different animal, because it is somewhat circumstantial. And as we get older, a lot of times those are circumstances we can't totally change. We can do a lot, but not all of it. Life is life. And but if you're developing muscle, so I guess what I would say, and I only have my own gym to refer to, but I would say there's a lot of wonderful fitness and gyms out there that can provide this as well. But in my particular gym, because we do a 3-day-a-week, very programmed, dialed-in small group training, you're going to come to the same class Monday, Wednesday, Friday, say at noon. You're going to come at that time. There will never be more than 7 other members there. Oftentimes 3 or 4, depending on the class, and you really get to know them. Now that, you really get to know them, and you get to know them and your coach and me. I know all of the members of my gym, and we have a really great tribe and a vibe going for that. But so what that does for, like, especially an older person, they're coming in, they are improving their mental health, the anxiety, the depression, because of the actual strenuousness of the lifting, the weight training. But then they are seeing the same people. I think there's a lot to that. We can be in a crowd and still feel lonely because we don't know the people. When you're seeing the same people every week, that becomes a social center. And especially when you're sharing the common goal of increasing your muscle mass. That is a very specific, difficult, exciting common goal. Yeah. And as we know, that is why church communities are so important, right? You're sharing a higher aspiration. Now, unfortunately, church communities are shrinking, which which is too bad. But I think that's where we're getting a lot of our loneliness too. It's not enough to just hang out with a group. It needs to be people. I shouldn't say it needs to be. Ideally, our best social networks that are going to make us feel the most connected and the least lonely are when, as a group, we have a common goal and we are reaching for a higher aspiration or a higher ideal. That's why a strength training community or a fitness community where there's a real goal is so edifying for older people. So I'm really, and younger people too. I think younger people are lonely too, but it does tend to hit older people. So that's what I get really excited about is when you come, there's two great things going on. Your neurons are firing and your muscles developing, and that's fighting off your anxiety and depression. But then you have this tribe, and they might be people, our gym, they might be people from a totally different background and worldview. It doesn't matter because you're both there to get strong.
Shared purpose. And you're cheering each other on. And we have a 18-year-old big, huge dude that wants to get strong, for his football next to an 81-year-old lovely lady, and they're hanging out and talking, and they're cheering for each other. You would think that you'd be embarrassed. When I first started, I thought, oh, it's me. I don't want to watch someone lift. That might be a little, oh no, that we lose that right away. Yeah. You might be doing a deadlift that's 1/4 of what the dude next to you is. It doesn't matter. Everyone's excited for you and you want people to watch you. Yeah.
You're like, look at this. Amanda, can you film that for me? Thanks. And you're posting it. Yeah. You lose a lot of those inhibitions. Yeah. So
and we have one lady who went from that to getting friends with the other people in the gym. And then she found herself going on hikes with them.
So fun.
And now four of them have gone on a cruise together.
That's so fun.
And so it gave her a family.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And one thing that I love in our gym, I love to meet with all the clients and chat and stuff, but I've noticed the longer we're there and the more our community gets developed, I'm kind of in their way. I'll go talk to them and they're having their own conversation. They're leaving and going for coffee. They're not inviting me. They're going doing their own thing. And I think that is just so great. Now, some people aren't interested in that, and that's okay too. You can just come and lift and we'll be friendly to you, but you can just do your thing. But it's so fun because then friendships can form. It starts with that common purpose, but you might meet someone who you just have a ton of other things in common with them. I mean, how great is that?
Yeah.
It's so fun.
Yeah. So we should probably wrap up,
Jen.
Yeah. But do you have just a few tips for listeners who might be interested in getting into strength training? Just touch on things that might make it seem less scary if that's not something they've ever done.
I love that you asked that because I do think a lot of people are intimidated by strength training. Well, if I might be so bold, I don't. This is just something that we offer for free. If they would be interested, we do offer at Starting Strength Beaverton a free 30-minute coached session. There's no cost. There is zero pressure to come. So if any of your listeners would want to come just for that, they don't have to sign up, but they could come and our coach would talk with them about what strength training is and go through just the basics of a squat with an empty bar even, or a light bar. That's a great way to just all of a sudden you're like, this is not scary. That's just a great way to bring down that scaffolding and that barrier that you think is between you and the gym bros. There's just none of that. So they could come in and do something like that. If not at our gym, I would encourage them to go. A lot of places do offer something like that or a trial, something. I would encourage them, if they are interested in strength training, to find a place that they could, just to get started. I know not everyone wants to do the coach personal trainer thing, but if they can even invest in one session to go through just the foundational movements of a squat and a deadlift, that will reap big benefits. And now if that's not a possibility, if they're interested in strength training, I would say to the number one thing, can I make a plug? This is not us, so I can do this. This is the Barbell Prescription, Strength Training for Life After 40. Okay, and it's written by John Sullivan, who is something of a celebrity in our world. And this, I would recommend, if they're not ready to read this whole book, read the introduction to this book. This book will tell you why we need to strength train, and it will give you some fundamentals. They can start there. They can do a free session at our gym or somewhere else. They can do their own research. I mean, we joke about YouTube, but there's some great sources out there. If they even go onto we have a Starting Strength Gym's YouTube channel. starting strength gyms, there are all these great people of all different ages and fitness levels with their stories. There's actually short tutorials on how to do each one of the lifts. So those are all things that you can do. You can also talk. I would suggest everyone probably knows someone who strength trains. Talk to them about it. They will, anything, like I said, anything that will bring down that barrier that it's something that other people do. Anything that's going to be your first step, because it's strength is for everyone.
And tying into that a little bit would be, if you can find a buddy. It really, for most of us, it makes a difference if we have somebody to do this with. So maybe you need to go to the gym to get a buddy, but if you have somebody who you can encourage to come with you, because we can all benefit from this kind of thing.
Absolutely, a friend, a community, a tribe. It's so critical. And you don't, when I talk about a tribe and community, I want to make it clear, not everyone's a social butterfly. Not everyone's an extrovert. That's not what I'm talking about. You don't have to feel like you have to go to the gym. But even for an introverted person who likes their space, to just have one person that notices, hey, you were gone. Are you okay? What's going on? We need that. As humans, we need that. So a buddy is fantastic.
Yeah. Well, thank you very, very much, Jen.
Thank you
appreciate
so much.
this. I hope the listener, I hope we've encouraged you to think about muscle mass, fitness, as really a huge factor in how life is going to be for you in 5 and 10 and 15 years. And that's a good way to think, because your health 401k is a whole lot more important than your financial 401k. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.